Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I want to be more excited. I want you to be more excited. Let's do this one more time. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
That's what I'm talking about, because you are in the midst of greatness. Alice, Aida, Ayers, Marjorie, Williams-Smith, thank you so much for being here for this second panel discussion for Women Create Space, Grace, and Power. This exhibition is a homage to women and the emerging mid-career and master artists that we've assembled here today. And today we're going to have a conversation with, of course, Marjorie and
No, that's Marjorie.
Marjorie, which one of you? No, seriously though, you didn't come here to hear me talk, but I am Garbo Hearn. I'm the director of Pyramid Art Books and Custom Framing, where our focus is Black culture through fine art and literature, and I'm so glad you're here. So with no further ado, we're gonna get started. Both will introduce themselves, and then I will ask a few questions, and then we'll have time for Q&A. Is that okay with everybody?
Yes.
All right, let's get started. Start with you. Oh.
Thank you all for being here this morning. I appreciate it greatly. My name is Marjorie Smith, and my artwork is on the north side of the building. And I've been working with Silver Point since 1986, so a long time, but I'm still learning how to use it and how to express my ideas with it. I'll share more about that today.
My name is Alice Aida Ayers, and I have to give my gratitude to Ms. Marjorie Williams-Smith because she was my professor and mentor and academic advisor at the University of Arkansas at Little Rock. So, so we have a history together, which is such a blessing, and I feel really honored to be sharing a stage with her because she taught me so much. You are so welcome, and you know it's true. Okay, but I do textile art, hand-stitched art quilts, which I incorporate found objects and things that are very precious to me. And I've been doing that since about 1993. Yes, we mid-career artists.
Well, we had to put you somewhere in this spectrum. So, this panel is called Emerging Spirit, a dialogue on being. And the journey of being is, as artists who have been practicing for several decades, how has your definition of what it means to be an artist changed since your early years in the studio? It's a play on words.
As a child, I always liked making things. My earliest memory is my mom buying us some coloring books and a box of crayons and just, color. And I didn't know about filling in or, go outside the lines, but something told me those lines meant something. I did not go outside the lines. I was trying very hard to stay inside the line. But I never thought of myself as an artist. I just was having fun. And as I got older and we had art in school, it was still fun. And then as I was able to maybe acquire some more things other than just crayons, it was a hobby. So I didn't think of it as being an artist. But once I got in high school and people were saying, well, what are you going to do after this? I'm like, I don't know. I kind of like art. And my teacher was saying, well, you could be an art. I'm like, really? Because people would always say artists starve. You're going to be a starving artist. So I thought, I don't know. Maybe I'll be a commercial artist. That's what they called it then. Now it's graphic design on computers. But I thought, well, I could make money and still kind of be creative, but it's not my ideas, it's what a client wants. So it's not as scary. So I went to school for commercial art. I went to Howard University, and then at some point I found another medium, printmaking. Oh, printmaking. I won't be able to make any money. So what do? I'll be a teacher. I can have a job and still make art. But at what point did it become, I am an artist? And that didn't happen until after I moved to Little Rock, which was years later, after school. And it's because I was actually spending time in a studio, which was a bedroom, and making pictures. And after having several pictures, then I thought, well, I'm an artist? Anybody taking me seriously? No. But do you stop doing it? No. So I think once I started to have more pictures that were of a consistent nature, then I started to feel, oh, I'm an artist. Now by this time, I actually had gotten into teaching art at UALR. And I thought, okay, now I have to produce, because part of the responsibility of being a teacher there is you have to show, you have to exhibit. That's when it got kind of scary. Because who's going to want to show this? You know? So you had faculty exhibitions and you had to show. Now I'm starting to feel a little bit more confident that maybe I can call myself an artist. Right? And so that was kind of that journey. That's when it changed for me.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that about you.
It's a dark secret.
But you know, women from our generation, it's like, okay, you're going to get a degree in art. Okay, you have to teach.
Yes.
You have to teach. You know, and I even remember my academic advisor saying to me, you know, because mine is art education.
Yes.
You know, well, get something you teach. But I got that degree because I love all kinds of arts. I love performance. You know, I really think I can sing. I can't, but I really think I can. You know, I love being on stage. I love creating. I love, you know, all of the arts, you know, and how all of the arts just overlap.
They do.
You know? So, I mean, I started with painting a long time ago, and when I was working on my degree, I was, you know, illustration and painting. Mm-hmm. And then with an emphasis towards teaching, I thought, oh my God, I don't want to teach. I don't want to teach. I really don't want to teach. And of course, now I love teaching. Yeah, but you don't know that then, right? I always just wanted to make, you know, you just have that strong desire to just create whatever you can, you know, for you. You know, but in my early career, I thought, well, okay, I've got to do this to make money, and I've got to do it for people. You know, what will people like? You know, I'm doing it for them. So I wasn't doing it for my soul. I wasn't feeding me. You know, now it's like, I mean, this is me. This is my authentic self. And what a blessing if you love it. You know, what a blessing if you don't, because I do. You know, and that's the thing, you know, and that's with our work, right? So where we came from was kind of that same thing. I didn't start my education until much later. So when you were teaching me, I was pushing 40. Yeah, so I didn't start my education until later, but I always made art since I was a child. Mm-hmm. I remember my first mural I painted was with nail polish. I was 12 years old. Okay. And I stole my mom's nail polish. And I locked myself in my bedroom and I painted this mural on the wall. Yeah, I can still feel that. So, yeah. But, you know, I just wanted to, and but it was like, you know, this is hard. Well, I think I got in more trouble for stealing your nail polish than but you know, then they came and they painted over it and I was crushed, but I said, that's not going to stop me.
Good.
You know, so I kept on, later I did the door, you know, I was always defacing my parents' house. But, you know, you get that, you know, you've got that drive and you've got that need to make, to create, to paint. You know, and we artists, all, you know, and when people say they're not artists, you are. Yeah. You really are, because you're probably sneaking behind your mom's door and making something. Anyway, I don't even remember what she asked us, but you know.
I remember teaching, and I would tell the students, particularly in an art appreciation class, because they don't really kind of understand it fully, and I would say, you're making design choices every day. You might not realize that. What color blouse did you decide to buy? You know, did it match the pants that you were going to wear? Or what color you painted your living room? Well, my husband wants blue, but I really want pink. You know, you have to figure that out. Those are design decisions. And so everybody has that little spark of creativity in it. Just have to nurture it.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so mid-career, my term,
Here we go.
is often described as a transition from proving one's talent to deepening one's message. What is something you felt you had to emphasize early in your career that you no longer feel the need to justify today?
That's good. I'll go ahead and say that when I was making that early art, I felt because after I had my formal education and learned about the elements of design, and I felt that I had to stick by those rules, that it wasn't a successful piece unless I followed those rules. And then after I went to Africa and realized, honey, you could just throw anything together and create, I had to forget all of those rules and start over again. And then so that is the part of it in like my mid-career that really, that I focus on more, and just being very intuitive, let it all come from, from that God source, from intuition. And the thing is, of course, you learn and you have that formal education, so it's in there anyway. But you're not always making sure that it's represented on the canvas or on the surface or whatever.
Yeah. For me, I think when I was at Howard, my drawing instructor was very influential. And most of the faculty was African American, but she was the only non-African American teacher there. And her background was she had attended the Philadelphia Academy of Art. And as a project for myself, I decided to try to find my artistic lineage. I looked at Jeff Donaldson, who was there, Lois Jones, who was there, and all these people who were in Africa over there, and I couldn't get very far. But with my drawing instructor, Lila Asher, who went to the Philadelphia College of Art, and who was her instructor, and then I was able to go back to John Dominique Ames. Now, if you're familiar with Ames' work, it's I-N-G-R-E-S, Ames. And I always thought of his work as very academic, just having that formal training that you were talking about, elements and principles, but his tool was the pencil, just very precise. So I thought, that's where I got it, right? It was passed down through all those teachers. And when I got to Mrs. Asher's class, and she was very much about the formal approach, particularly in figure drawing. And then, it was scary as heck those first few times, because I'd never seen an unclothed person. Right? I'm like, oh my gosh. And my friend next to me, we gotta look at this person. I'm like, holy cow. So the first few drawings were, really weird. But after a while, and Mrs. Asher was very nurturing, and just had a way about her that helped us get through the fear, so we could actually get to the heart of it, but with these strong principles in structure and the formal qualities of drawing. So I kept taking classes with her. And when I left and I went to graduate school, and I found another instructor who was also like that, continued with figure drawing. So when I started teaching drawing classes, that was where I wanted to be. I wanted to impart that same structural foundation, and trying to now, do I suppress that? No, it's just an inherent part of who I am as an artist. But I don't think about it in the forefront. I'm thinking now about what I want to say. What's coming across to the viewer. So that's important. But I think they'll probably still see the structural things.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Marjorie, you've spoken about the shimmering quality of silver point. And Alice, you've discussed the spirit inherent in recycled materials. How do your physical materials act as a bridge to the spiritual world in which you currently create?
What?
It is real. It's real.
Well, I'll go ahead.
Please.
I made notes, I'm sorry.
You go, girl.
I think the medium helps create an environment. when I first started with Silver Point, I was already doing a series of drawings in pencil on flowers, particularly roses. I really focused, the first one I ever did was rose. And then another rose and another, and I kept doing roses, and everybody said, that's the rose lady. You know, but that's what was accessible. The first one I ever did, my daughter was like 2 or 3 months old. She had a brief moment of sleep, and I snuck in and thought, I'm going to draw something. And this rose was laying on the table, and I drew it. And then I drew more, and I drew more. And then I started to think about, well, it's very quiet when I'm drawing. You know, that's my only time where she's not crying, and I have a moment's rest. I'm not busy, I'm not gonna clean the house, I'm just gonna do this. But they were small moments. And I think the environment of the drawing got to be this very quiet space that I hoped viewers would see. And I brought this drawing in to kind of give an idea of the space that is created in these drawings, that is just you and this subject matter, no background. It started with just white. It's very quiet, very peaceful, and it's like prayer. When you're communing with that spirit and feeling that energy and trying to impart that to your viewer. And with this one, I had a rose that I was starting to draw, and as I was prepping, petals kept falling off. You know, so it only got down to one petal. Just one was, I said, well, hold on, you know, just stay on there. And I drew it, and then something said, it needs something else. And this is where you take a leap of faith. I said, I'm gonna put smoke on it. Now, where did I get that idea? I saw a drawing by my friend Susan Schwab, who's like a master of Silver Point, and she put smoke on something. I'm like, oh my gosh, how did she not burn up her drawing? I said, well, if I burn it up, I'll just do it again. So I got flame, and I got it so it would just get this soot, a channel of soot, and I put a paper doily on top. I'm really trying to set this thing on fire. Right? So I had the smoke kind of wafting through the doily, and you can see these patterns, which kind of remind me of stained glass windows. You know, an old style window. But the title is Whisper to One. What is it like when the Holy Spirit is speaking to you? What do you get from that moment, right? And there's a scripture that says, and I'm not good at memory, so the young man was sleeping, and he thought he heard his master calling, and he would go to the master, and the master said, I didn't call you. Samuel. Okay, thank you, Samuel. So Samuel went back to bed. It happened again. I didn't call you. But he went back, and the third time he said, speak, Lord, your servant is listening. Right? So that whisper to you, what is that like? That's how it felt to me. So that was special, that environment. The medium does that.
Wow. Oh, you make me want to cry.
Oh.
No, it's just so beautiful. I mean, gosh. Whew. You have a fan there? Yeah, well, it's so, I know, God, you know, it really is so beautiful because I understand so much what you're saying, because the act of creating art is such a spiritual experience. It really is. And then, you know, for me, I do include a lot of found objects, and I include gifted things, gifted fabric, reused fabric, repurposed fabric into my work. And so when I have a piece of fabric that's been used by somebody else, I mean, first there's, you know, the fabric itself has those lives, 3 lives. You know, you have that raw material, 3 or 4 lives. Then you have that manufactured material that it becomes. Then you have the creation that somebody has made. And then you have the worn. You know, so it's got all those energies in there. And so sometimes when I'm just feeling this fabric, you know, there's just such a connection with the lives that have already been associated with that material. And it can be an object, it can be a piece of jewelry, it can be a little broken something, you know. So I was living in Africa 23 plus years, And I always found things. I always found objects. I'd walk down the street, and I was teaching, so my students, they'd come with me, and I'd see something, and they'd be like, "Oh gosh, don't be Aida. Stop picking up trash, please. It's so embarrassing." So, it's like, "Oh my gosh, look at that. It's so beautiful." You know, I put it in my pocket, you know, and just those objects, because, you know, and you feel it, and you can feel that vibration and that beautiful energy and that spirit. And especially when it's something that is gifted, that meant something to somebody, you know, and, you know, so those objects, and including them in a piece of work, brings that work to life, because you have got the lives, the memories, the genetic memory, the physical memory of somebody else, and their DNA is in those pieces, you know, and that's how the spirit comes into the physical world, you know. So it's just a beautiful thing, yeah. But you know, you're talking about the Samuel, and you're talking about creating without fear. So just doing it, and not, because of course as artists we question, you know, just, but dismiss that and just do it, and just do it because it feels good and it feels right and it brings joy and love. And you know, my motto is lead with love. So as long as I am leading and putting love into it, it's going to be great, whatever it is. Because love is God, love is spirit, and infinite intelligence, creator, Allah, whatever you want to call it.
Very good. That's me.
All right.
Okay, so now we're going to go into this technical evolution with medium and message. Marjorie, you spent decades mastering silver point, a medium that is both meticulous and unforgiving, since it can't be erased. How has the permanence of this medium taught you about patience or the emerging spirit within your subject matter, like the flowers in your Black Fields series?
Well, biggest thing I would say is haste makes waste. Don't rush. Slow down. I learned that, I won't say the hard way, but there were a lot of false starts. I think when I started and I saw this exhibition at the Art Center of Silver Point drawings, and I wanted to try it, and the first few drawings, but it doesn't look like theirs, you know. So, and the work had a lot of hatching and cross-hatching. And I had to learn how to do that again, because my pencil drawings were just value, no lines. So when I switched to this tool and it was lines, I was like, oh, wait a minute. I'm going to go back to pen and ink and do some hatching and cross-hatching with pen and ink, just get me, you know, familiar with that again. Then I'll come back to the metal point. And so that's what I did. But again, I had to slow down. So I really learned patience. And if you have kids, you learn patience, right? You learn that they need time to learn, and we need time to learn as well. So I had to slow down. So usually I wait till they would go to bed, end of the day, and it's quiet. Then I can go back and work more slowly. Now, I remember you were saying last night, one of these pieces took 6 months. It doesn't matter how long it takes, right? You just do it. You enjoy the process, you enjoy and sometimes when you finish, I don't know about you, but when I finish, like, oh man, I'm done.
You know, it's like postpartum depression.
I know. I gotta do another one right away. Because, and I might be thinking about that next one because I don't want that gap. Really, you know, because like you get this euphoria while you're working. So, so I have to take my time, and that was fine.
Nice.
Alice, your work heavily incorporates repurposed materials and found objects. As you've progressed through your career, has your eye for these objects changed? Do you find that you're looking for different energies and materials now than you were 20 years ago?
Same materials as far as recycled, repurposed materials, because I've always been a collector of little stuff. So, and especially when I went to Africa the first time in '93, I started just collecting stuff. And, you know, I mean, all kinds of, whether it was beads or spearheads or, you know, scraps, little scraps of fabrics or, you know, little yarn. I was just in Morocco recently, and there was this ball of yarn, and I was like, ooh, and it was camel. It was camel, yeah. And I'm like, oh my gosh. You know, so the man said, just take it, put it in your pocket. Just take it. You know, he was like, yeah, but just leave, please. Yeah, yeah, I was real excited. But so no, my fascination with the objects hasn't changed because I just love the little objects, and I've got boxes full, and I never know when or even if I'm going to use the stuff, but it's there, and I visit it. I visit all of this stuff. So when I'm making a piece, that I'll pull out the box and I'll just visit and see what feels right. So I'm not trying to match. In fact, my theory is that matching creates a mental block. You know, so you can't match because it just really, you know, it stops creativity. Don't worry about that kind of thing. Just play. Yeah, but you know, so objects really hold a special place for me. And some of the objects, yeah, for example, in that piece over there, the reconciliation between religion and spirituality, there are objects in there that I've had for 20 plus years, you know, and sometimes I'll sew them in, sometimes I'll hide them in there and sew fabric over them. But you know, interestingly, you're talking about how your medium is so unforgiving, and mine, I make a mistake and I will cut a piece of fabric and sew over it. You know, that doesn't look good. Okay, let me put something else on top of that. Yeah, so, you know, so that process, so in some areas it could be very thick, in other areas very thin, because, you know, I'm not going to take the whole thing apart. I'm just going to move forward and take it to where, you know, intuitively it's leading me.
So this question is for both of you. Both of you work in media that are very labor intensive, hand stitching and silver point drawing. In an age of digital speed, how does the slow, ritualistic nature of your work contribute to your own spiritual well-being?
It is a ritual. You know, every time I make a work or start on a work, it is a ritual. But first let me say, you're talking about, like, you know, the 6 months and the feeling you get when you finish a piece. Yeah, that I always start another piece before I finish, because I don't want that gap, because it scares me a little bit. Because I always think, ooh, what if I can't make something that, you know, what if, yeah. So no, let me go ahead and get this started, you know, get like a quarter of the way, and then go back to this one and finish it off. So I have probably, you know, around my place, 5 or 6 unfinished pieces, and then I'll kind of go to them when the spirit is calling me like that. So what was your question, darling? That, you know, that's that mid-career mental.
Understanding that everything is now, let's do it now, everything's digital, is that going to force you to change the way you create?
You know, I think for me, it actually forces me to want to create more of the labor, time-intensive work, because everything is so rush, instant, you know, and that kind of world is very confusing, and I don't like it, and I get, you know, I get thrown, but when I am just moving through it very methodically, and I tell you what, sitting down and just stitching, gosh, you know, time just leaves, and I have found myself stitching for, you know, 12, 13 hours and forgetting to stand up and walk, or forgetting to eat, just stitching, and then I stand up and I'm like, oh Lord, what happened? What have I been doing? You know, and just the pain, where's the ibuprofen? So, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
You know, you do it, and it's prayer. It's, you know, it is. I mean, it's just paying homage to, and that hand stitching. When I think about the history of hand stitching, and for you know, our ancestors that came across with, you know, all of these beautiful skills, and stitching was such a vital part of, you know, enslaved people, and, you know, getting to freedom. And it's just, oh my gosh, you know, I feel like there's some kind of genetic memory that I'm doing something that an ancestor of mine did, and I have to be doing that. But I can't do that with an AI. I can't do that on a computer. You know, it's something that has to be done physically. And like I was saying yesterday, my DNA is literally in every piece, because I am always stabbing myself. I don't even feel it, because my fingers have been doing it so long. So, you know, it's like, oh, blood, doggone it. You know, sometimes I have like 3 or 4 Band-Aids on my fingers, you know. You won't be able to see it though in the piece.
I was gonna say the colors match into your design. So
Yeah, it just kind of blends in. Yeah.
So for me, slowing down that process it's spiritual, so I can clear the slate of my day and just do that. You know? And once I retired, I got to do that even more, because when I was teaching, I had an 8 o'clock class, and I got up at like 5:30 or 6, get ready, be there before 8. I tried to be there at 7:30 and set up the room. And but when I retired, I was like, wow. I took a picture of myself on that day when I turned in my keys and everything. I was so happy. I said, freedom. Oh my gosh. You know, I love teaching. I love my students. But when
I know you, me especially.
Especially.
Yeah.
And your sister who was here last night.
Yes.
So that freedom, and I could get up and like, what am I going to do? I'm going to be in my studio all day. And my husband was still working, so I had the house to myself. You know, my kids had left town. There was nobody. And it was just great. And I think that was probably my most prolific time. I think I did about, I retired in May, and by December I had finished 6 pieces. Now that's fast. But then I got to spend hours, you know, during the day. And in terms of just getting into the mindset for this creativity to happen, I would have to clean my studio after each piece. See, this is this training I got back at Howard from this disaster. You know, this got to be. So my studio had to be clean, and my board had to be ready. Got my pieces, and had to have the right music to get this going. And be all ruckusy and busy. Had to be very quiet, so I listen to classical music most of the time until I'm almost finished, and I can maybe get jazz.
Okay.
And then that's that time where I can commune with that energy. And that energy to create, you know, do you ever look at a piece when it's done and say, how did I do that?
I do. I'm
Yes.
like, oh my God.
It's like, I do.
Or sometimes I do this. I did that.
Yeah. How did I do that? I don't even know. I don't remember. So it's like I was being led. You know, you're being led to do this
absolutely.
thing. And then when it's done,
Absolutely.
you know, and then sometimes I also get images. You know, I was having a dream one night, and 5 images came to my mind. I said, oh my gosh. I got up right then. It was like 2 or 3 in the morning. I got right then. I did sketches and drew them out.
Wow.
So that then I wouldn't forget, because I've lost a whole bunch of images that I could not record when I woke up. You know? So it's very, very spiritual, and I would hate to give that up. Because when I was coming along, people say, artist, girl, you're going to starve. And I say, they don't even know me. How can you tell me I'm going to starve? I'm not going to be successful. I'm not going to do anything with this. You have no idea. You don't even know me. So you can't give up.
You know, and my response was always, because I got that too, and I'm like, you know, if I do, I'm going to keep doing what I love, whether I make money from it or never make a dime from it. This is what I love to do. This is what I do. You know, and I worked all kinds of jobs, you know, as a single mother, just, you know, I used to drag my daughter to class with me, but you worked all kinds, but you know, the art, whether I got paid or not, I knew that's all I wanted to do, and I still feel the same way, you know. This is what I do.
Okay. Let's move into heritage, history, and healing. Marjorie, your recent work is focused on crops cultivated by enslaved Africans. Alice, you draw heavily on African mask and ritual artifacts. How do you both balance the weight of historical trauma with the emerging spirit of resilience and beauty in your art?
Well, I think for me, with that series, Black Fields, what started it was I was reading an article in the New York Times Magazine, Sunday edition, about the 1619 Project. And so every Sunday I always read that magazine, a couple of articles. Well, this one focused entirely on the project. And I started reading one article about the sugar plants and how enslaved Africans had to work those fields. It was horrific. I mean, I kept saying, why do I not know this? Why didn't I hear about this in school? They didn't say anything about this. You know, we heard about slavery, and it was bad, but I didn't realize it was that bad, right? Maybe we wanted to stop using sugar altogether because it And if you lived to be 30, if you were enslaved, if you lived to be 30 on a sugar plantation, you were lucky, because most of them were dead before 25. It was so harsh. And I just got so angry. If you know me, I don't, I'm an easygoing person, peaceful. But I was so angry. I was just like, what? Why? Why do this to people? So what do I do with all this negative energy? I said, I'm gonna draw a sugar field. I'd never even seen a sugar field. So I just found pictures online, doctored them up so I wouldn't get sued for plagiarism, and said, I'm gonna draw a sugar field. And now, you see these 1 roses, 1 or 2 flowers. Here I've got a massive thing of plants. Oh my gosh, but I'm gonna do it, right? So I figured out a way to do it. I gridded off the page. I went in and piece by piece, very methodical, because that's my training, to do it very methodically, and I finished. Now, if you were to see that picture, you will see faces in there. I purposely hid a few faces, because these people were engulfed in this field. Their energy. I finally did get to a sugar field in Louisiana about 3 or 4 years ago, and out there it's eerie. Even cotton fields, it's eerie. You can still feel the spirits there, right? And so I did this drawing, and as I was almost finished, I thought, I got to think about the next one. What else am I going to do? So something said, what else was cultivated by African Americans? So it had the sugar, you have cotton, tobacco, rice, and indigo. Like, whoa. The country got rich off of all of this, right? Rich. We didn't. So let's go see if we can find these fields. So in doing the drawings of these fields, kind of eased that anger. I still get upset, but it also sent me on another journey of learning more about my history. I started doing some genealogy. I found that I thought everybody in my family was from Maryland and Pennsylvania. They weren't. They were from Virginia, where they had tobacco. So maybe my ancestors were growing tobacco, Got to visit rice fields just right outside Pulaski County. You could see rice fields, took pictures. My husband's from Mississippi. We've been there several times. Cotton, everywhere, just cotton. Tobacco, we found that in South Carolina, and rice was also in South Carolina, probably first. Arkansas didn't get it until like 1900 or something like that. And then the sugar in Louisiana. Indigo is the one that I'm still trying to get. But I have a plan. This summer, I finally found somebody who's an indigo practitioner, and hopefully we can get there and add that. So that's kind of eased the trauma part of it, and hopefully if I can share that with others, they say, we don't want to talk about it. We don't want to talk about that history. It just make us feel so bad. Well, get over it. I feel bad. Why shouldn't we all feel bad? Because we're going to learn from it. But right now, things are such where the history is it's being suppressed. So whatever entryway I can offer people to reflect on that, hopefully that'll help.
Beautiful.
Okay. So what you doing?
Oh, what was the question? I'm just mesmerized by Marjorie, so I'm sorry. I forgot I was up here. I thought I was part of the audience.
I mentioned that your work has African mask and ritual artifacts. And how do you balance that historical trauma with your emerging spirit?
Okay. Similar stories, of course. But for me, what really helped me to come full circle was going to the continent. And the first trip that I took was to Mali. And you're talking about indigo. One of the first things I did was I got to work with indigo artists, the women dyeing the fabric, and I was with there, and the feet are all purple, and they're, and it was so wonderful. This kind of stitching is what we did. We have tying off the fabric and dyeing it. And then, you know, of course, then I start thinking about, you know, these fabrics, and then, you know, the transatlantic slave trade, and, you know, the similarities. And when I went to Mali, everybody said, oh, sister, yes, you're Fulani. You are definitely Fulani. So I'm like, okay, I'm claiming that. So, you know, but that helped me to kind of understand and reconcile. And in my own heritage, you know, I always told, I don't even think you remember, but my dad was from the D.C. area, and I told you a long time ago, we're probably related, girl, and we just don't even know it. You know, and my mom from her people from Mexico and Spain and Portugal. So, you know, there was always this, and growing up, there was always this kind of, well, you know, they used to call us, you know, the half-black kids. So, you know, I'm a half-black kid, and I'm a, you know, and 100 other different names. So I'm trying to figure out, well, you know, God, you know, who am I? Who am I? So I had to finally, you know, feel in my spirit what was calling me and what I gravitated toward. Mm-hmm. So when I went to Mali in 1993, and I was in a Dogon village, and there was a mass dance going on, and I was sitting on top of a rock, you know, just kind of looking down at the dance, and this dancer on stilts came up to me in his mask, I mean, just, you know, a foot away from my face, and I just busted out crying, and I transcended, and I felt something I had never ever felt in America. I always wondered how people, you know, were so religious, and how they were drawn to Catholicism or to, you know, being, you know, and really understood what spirit was in the church, and I never got it. It never happened to me. Mm-hmm. But honey, when I sat up on that rock, I promise you I understood what getting the Holy Ghost was. Hallelujah. Seriously, it changed me. And it really changed me, so I needed to find out about my people and my heritage and my culture. And I remember hearing some little story about, the slavers going into a village and capturing, and a mother tying a little piece of indigo fabric in the hair of her child, hiding it in there. So when they put her on the slave ship, it just grew into her hair, and it was always there, so that she'd always remember. I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
I'm such a wuss.
No.
You know, just to remember where you came from.
Yeah.
You know, and so my work is all about, you know, this is where I come from. You know, and it's, you know, it's glorious and beautiful and artistic and creative and full of love. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the rituals are all, my art is ritual. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Next time you go to Africa, let me know. I'm going to go with you.
Come with me, sister, please. Yeah, Garbo too. She's always telling me. I told her, I said, let's go. Yeah. I'm ready. We can go in September.
Okay, so we are moving to advice in the future spirit. So for the younger artists in the audience who are just beginning their becoming, what is one practice, spiritual or technical, that you believe is essential for sustaining a lifelong career in the arts?
I would say don't give up.
Mm.
I mean, you just got to have the idea in your mind that you're going to just stick with it. If that person who told me I was going to starve because I was going to be an artist, if I had stopped right then, I wouldn't be here right now. Mm-hmm. So I had to just say, you don't know me, so go away. You know, block out that negativity. My family was always very supportive. My mom was into needlecraft. She taught me how to sew. She did knitting, crochet. My dad was a carpenter. He was always creating. And his first little sketches of how to make a box in 3 dimensions, I copied that. So I figured his sketches, that got me into sketching too. But you can't bend to the pressures of people out there, because they don't like your subject matter, or they don't like your style, or you're not making money, or you don't have color, or I don't know. There could be all sorts of reasons why. Just don't even listen to that. Just stick to it, have faith, believe that you can do what you're doing.
Yeah, that's good advice. Yeah, I would say to young artists is just love what you do so much that whether you get paid or not is irrelevant. And if you love it enough, you can turn it into a business if that's what you want to do. But you've got to have that passion. You've got to find that passion and just really just hang on to it and do it no matter what. Yeah, just, you know, and whatever it is you do, and then just do it with joy, do it with love, because, you know, it's fun, and play, right?
Yes,
Oh my gosh, you gotta play and not be afraid of making mistakes, because, you know, what's a mistake but just a missed opportunity? It's just, there's no such thing as failure.
No.
You know, that's a lesson learned. Learn those lessons, use those lessons, move forward.
Exactly.
You know, and forget about what everybody else says.
Yeah, and I would tell my students, they would say, well, that's, you know, you teach me something, but that's not my style.
You're right.
And I would say, you don't
Are you
have
talking
a
about me
style.
again?
No.
Okay.
You weren't the one. But then he said, but yeah, I said, you don't have a style. You don't get to have a style. Maybe when you graduate, you might find it later, but don't start that now.
Right,
You know,
right.
At least not in
Learn.
my class.
Yeah,
You can have a style wherever else you
yeah,
want.
yeah,
But because that locks you in.
yeah.
And it's bending to the pressures of whatever's fashionable. And then that'll be gone,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
So you just have to be committed to yourself,
Mm-hmm.
and it'll happen.
Yeah, work on being just authentic, you know, being your authentic self, you know, and you don't have to find your voice is gonna come, but just do it, you know, just do it, and and then see what happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so now it's Q and A in the audience term. I know we've asked a lot of intense questions. Thank you for your honesty. Does anybody in the audience have a question for our artist?
I had a question.
Okay. Yes, sir.
So I know a lot of you, well, we talked a lot about persistence and like persevering and different things like that. But as somebody that was born in this generation with the instant gratification and just so much coming at you, like there's so much chatter, and you said when you draw there's silence. So how do you cultivate a space of peace and silence in this chatter
Yeah.
of everything? What advice do you guys have?
Well, I would say where you exist, your environment. You know, you might have to turn the phone off, because I know young kids are on the phone a lot. So maybe just put the phone away for a little. Just say, for this next hour, I put my phone in the drawer. Don't have the TV on while you're trying to work. And just allow, you know, baby steps. Take a little bit at a time. Because there's so much coming at us with this digital media. Constantly. I have to even check myself. Because it's easy to say, oh, now what? But that news thing, it's constant. It is constant. It will just like eat you up. So try to turn that off. And just, you know, give yourself that, get some tea, you know, turn on whatever music you enjoy. If you like working at night, great. If you like working in the day, make sure you got that sun coming in. Whatever it takes for you. Your best comfy chair. You don't even have to have an easel. Just set it in your lap. You know, I'm not working at an easel right now. At home, I got it on the table. I'm sitting there, got my lamp and my CD player, so that I can calm down. My house is erect right now because we got all this work going on in the house, this old house. So what do? Go to my own space, close the door, try to block out the drilling sound, put my headphones on to block it out, you know, and then I can work. So whatever it would take, sometimes even being in class, that's not where it's going to happen either. You got all these other people there. So whatever you can do, that's a try.
Good advice.
Okay, I am fortunate enough to enjoy in my home pieces from both of you. And when I hear you talk so intimately about the creativity and the silence that goes into it and the DNA that's into it, how in the world do you part with these pieces? You know, when I look around the room and see the new pieces, I'm going, okay, if I had wall space or ceiling space, I would take them home with me. But how do you come to part with them when you are so married to them and they are a part of you and your DNA?
For me, like I said before, you know, I love to do this because I love it. So if there is somebody else out there that can see my vision and appreciate it as much that they're actually willing to pay for it, then it was made for them. I always come into a piece thinking, okay, so I'm gonna share my prayer with you. I have, you know, in my meditation every morning, I say this prayer, and it goes like this. So for you other artists, create a prayer, create a, it will help, you know. So it goes, let me see if I can remember without looking at my cue card. No. I have perfect faith in God's design and power, and I know that infinite intelligence brings to me people who love my work, who want my work, and who can afford to pay for my work. I know that each purchase, when they purchase, I'm blessed and they are blessed, and I give thanks for that miracle in my life. And so, yeah, because you know, because nobody has to buy anything. You know, people say all the time, "Oh, I love your work," you know, and I appreciate the compliment. I mean, it's like, really? You get it? That's,
Yeah.
you know, that's enough. Somebody owning it, that's a bonus. That's a blessing. Gosh, I am so filled with gratitude. You know, so it's easy at that point to part with it because you know that, you know, you become family, Triopia. We become, you know, you become family when somebody owns and, you know, cares for a piece of your work.
And when you're creative, it's kind of like giving birth. You know, these are your children.
Yeah, and you gotta let them go at some
And you
point.
gotta let them go. So
Yeah.
some of them, I can't let go. I'm sorry.
Okay.
They're with me forever.
Yeah.
But yeah, you feel that energy out there,
Yeah,
and when
yeah.
somebody's actually wants it in their house, that they can feel it too. That's a blessing.
It really is. And when I visited and I saw that Triopia had pieces of that she had got of mine like back in like 1989 or something like that, I'm like, oh my gosh, I always wondered what happened. I didn't remember. That's so cool. You know? Yeah. It's just, and it's like I really am mid-career. Yeah.
Well, I'd like to know, how do you put a price on what you do?
Garbo. No. It's all in my head. But I do give credit to Garbo because she really did teach me how to value my work. Because before I was like, okay, a couple hundred. She's like, no. And she taught me a formula, and she kind of showed me, and I think about how many hours, because, you know, and I think about, you know, I put like, I know in that long piece there, it was 6 months, and I know there's over 700 hours in there, so how much money do I want to make per hour? You know, do I want to make 2 cents an hour? You know, so you really have to think about it,
the
too.
business side of it, and that's a challenge because, you know, that's not where our head is all the time.
Right. So to have somebody who can think that for you, gosh,
Yes.
that is a
That's
blessing.
helpful.
Yeah, because, I can't even think about that stuff. I have no idea. You know, and then it takes away from the creative process if you're thinking about
Yeah.
money and pricing and that kind of thing.
It's like we're not supposed to think that way. Because they don't teach that in school. They don't
No.
teach the business side of the
No, they
art.
don't.
You know, even teachers, there's a lot still that they don't get, so.
Yeah, it's true.
Hi, this is a question for you. I first met, oh, sorry. Okay. I like to think that both of your works are in all of our home because I work at the AMFA and both of your works are in the collection. And I first connected with Marjorie over email where I just simply asked her, tell me about Messengers, your piece. I'd like to have the opportunity to ask you, because the piece in our collection has what looks like an African spear. Now I'm really curious if it's something that you picked up on the road, and it has a young woman with a cell phone. So I would really love you to tell us about our piece in the collection, please.
I think, and I'm really honored that that piece is at the Arkansas Museum of Fine Arts. So, yeah, really. And I used to work there back when it was the Arkansas Arts Center. Yeah, so this is it's a full circle. But that piece is called Self-Love, and it's actually me taking a selfie. Because, like we were talking about, I got so, it was my granddaughter's fault, because I was like, stop with the selfies already. I mean, really, but if you're gonna do the selfies, at least, think of it as self-love. Take a selfie because you love yourself internally, not because, the outfit, the makeup, So that's what that's about. It's about self-love, and it's reflective of myself and my journey, okay? The spear represents, my journey throughout Africa, okay? And that piece it took me a long time to do that because I kept making corrections and it wasn't feeling. And then the spear is one that I picked up in Zanzibar, and it's a Maasai spear. And there's a big community of Maasai that are friends of mine, and that was gifted to me. So it felt like it needed to be there because not only am I filled with self-love, but I'm filled with a warrior spirit, So I wanted that to just kind of be reflective of that. So we've got modern technology and we've got ancient Africa in there. We got the warrior, we got the love, and we got progression and history, yeah.
Thank you. So it's less about absorption in your phone, it's about absorption in yourself.
Yeah.
And that's really nice, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for asking.
Any other questions?
Thank you. So you both have discussed being your authentic self and leaning into that, right? And then you also talked about you can get lost in your work for hours. Is there a non-negotiable self-care, something that you just say, look, I've got to make sure I do this for me in order for me to share my gifts with the world?
Pedicures.
All right.
I'm teasing. I'm joking. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I have prayer time in the morning. I try to make sure I get that. And what else? I guess listen to music. The music I listen to, and I'm always finding new things. I just found a new artist who's new to me, and right now his name is out of my head. But how did I find him? Sometimes on NPR they'll showcase somebody new, and this young man was from Africa, and he now lives in Tennessee or Kentucky, and he's kind of into bluegrass, but not really. You can hear the African in there, and he's talking about the trauma that he experienced because at 7 he was orphaned, and he was adopted by a missionary family, and they moved around. But he still remembers the trauma of the Civil War that was in his country, that he almost died, and he doesn't know he doesn't know his parents. So his mom was sexually assaulted by a soldier, and she got pregnant and they had birth, but then he lost his mom. So this music is kind of upbeat and all, but there's this story. It's kind of like what you're saying about the trauma, how do you get over the trauma, and when he's doing it through his music. And I played that on repeat for 2 or 3 days, and I'd wake up in the morning, that song was in my head, but it made me think about how we turn experiences into something creative, so I try to make sure the music, I touch on a lot of things. I make my own little playlist, so I got a couple that are about inspiration. And I go to my daughter's school, she's on the choir, she goes to Catholic school, and these kids, they have these songs, especially for the kids, it gets them all riled up. Yeah, we're clapping for Jesus. And, they just love it. And I love these songs, and I downloaded them so I could play them in the car, And so you have to have something that kind of builds you up.
And soothes your soul, music does.
Pedicure, no.
Yeah, pedicure. No, but for me, it's hiking. I'm a hiker. I'm a walker. There's my hiking buddy back there, and we just what did we hike 9 miles yesterday and 5 miles a day. I have to walk, and in walking, because walking is meditation. So as I get so many ideas, so I'll have my phone and then I'll record, okay, da 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 da. Sometimes I'll get home like, what? You know? But you know, walking, and I was walking the other day, and we kind of walk, you know, I'm living in Clarksville, Tennessee, and there are amazing trails throughout Tennessee, but we walk the same trail every morning. And one morning I was walking, and there was this kind of path, and of course I've walked it 100 times because I walk it every day, and then I was thinking to myself, wow, every time I walk this path, it's an entirely new path. You know, and I'm thinking, oh my God, I look like a big brain person. That is so deep, right? But I'm thinking, you know, every time. So in walking this new path every day, I'm getting all of these new ideas and this new inspiration, you know, and every season it's so different. But yeah, that walking meditation, non-negotiable. Yeah.
Okay, so.
My next question, and my last question, but I now deem it.
Ebony's putting.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Don't just dismiss my girl.
All right.
That's my little Ebony.
Thank you. Ebony Blevins, this is her work. She's part of this exhibition. I was definitely going to introduce you, but you can say hello, introduce yourself, and ask your question.
I'm Ebony. I'm working cyanotype with my art right now. It's a process. But anyways, the question I have is, I know you all were talking about how you get sad after you complete a piece, but in the process of creating the pieces and playing, how does your inner child feel satisfied after you create pieces, or does your inner child stay curious for you to create the next piece, or you know, how do you like fulfill that feeling of your inner child?
I guess I like to experiment as I'm looking at another piece and try some new things. I think that would help my inner child feel like I'm playing, because you can get kind of locked in, and I don't necessarily want to stay in one place. So that's kind of like why I did smoke, or put watercolor on something, or the piece I'm working on now is on a black gesso and has several different metals, but I'm putting pastel in it. So like, how do I balance the pastel? Because it's like I'm getting two different drawings. If I turn the light on, the metal pops. If I turn the light off, the pastel's there. I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
I mean, how do I balance that? You know. So every day is a new challenge. I bought all these color pencils and just trying to make sure that I get the balance. So that helps me play and have some fun with it. I've got some more ideas of stuff I'm gonna try. My teacher from drop spindle is here, Marielle, and I took a class last week on drop spinning, making yarn. So I'm getting better. But my first run was but you said to practice every day. I've been practicing every day. So my next batch is better. It's more even. But I've been collecting hair. So my goal ultimately is to spin hair. Wow. And then I'm going to incorporate that into pieces. Haven't figured that out yet, but it's going to happen. Okay.
Cool. For me, you know, that's when I pull out my box of stuff. You know, and then I just get to play, and then I go through and I'm like, oh, this is so cool. I didn't know I had this. That's like this little encre right here. It was in that box, and I'm like, oh my God, look at that. Oh, look at that silver too. Where'd that come from? You know. So you know, I just collecting stuff. You know, I don't even remember where stuff. You know, but that's the play. You know, and that always inspires something else. And again, you pick it up, and it's like, oh, there's something to that one. You know, let me go ahead and put that aside. And what I do is I get those objects and I put them on my altar. And so they're right there, you know. And then when I get that, I'll walk by, ooh, I think I'll use that. Yeah. Play. How do you like to play?
So thank you all. You will have the last word. Before I close out, I want to thank all of you for your presence today. The next conversation with artists will be via Zoom on June 7th, and we'll be talking about evolving, because we'll have all level of artists there. Anita Thomas, who's based in Philadelphia, Louise Mondumboa, who's from Botswana, who's based in Connecticut today, and Nina Robinson, who is a cyanotype artist who's online only, and Phoebe Beasley, who's based in California. So that'll be a conversation you won't want to miss. So give us your email address, and we'll make sure you get an invitation to be included. And all the rest of our artists will also be there. I have to say that now you are master artists. How does that feel? You're moving into that zone.
Yeah, we're not
Okay,
even 90
I did
yet.
get into that master artist zone. So my last question, because I want you all to have the last word, is looking forward, what is the next version of your spirit that you feel is currently emerging to your newest sketches or textile pieces? Now that you're master artists, okay?
Well, as I was saying, I'm experimenting with other things, with materials like trying to spin, and I'm gonna spin hair. I will this summer actually get to some indigo, so I'm hoping to get purple hands, and experiencing that and taking pictures of those fields, and somehow incorporating the indigo color into the pieces. So there's a whole nother avenue I'm really excited about, and so that's where I'm headed.
Yeah. For me, I'm going back to something that I used to do when I lived in Little Rock, like in 1989. I worked a lot with Andinkra symbols, and they've always meant so much to me. So now I'm developing a body of work and interpreting the Andinkra symbols, based on how they have influenced me over the last, how many years is that?